Good day. Want to wish you all a Happy New Year. And also, today is a very important day for Alaska. Does anyone remember what it is?
60 years.
60 years of Alaska statehood. Happy birthday, Alaska. So later on today, I'll be issuing a proclamation in honor of our statehood, the importance of the anniversary, and where we're going to be going in the future with Alaska. I mean, the past 60 years have been a terrific 60 years for this state. We have a lot to be grateful for. We have a lot to look forward to. But the main purpose of this press conference today is to talk about the earthquake. As we know, on November 30th, we had probably the second largest earthquake in terms of damage in Alaska's recorded history, 7.0. I personally experienced it, as well as a whole bunch of folks in this room did, and many Alaskans. As a result of that a massive earthquake, we're still being rocked by aftershocks. We felt a pretty good one, I think, on Sunday was about a 5.0, and then there was another one later on the next day or the day after, 4 point something. And we're going to continue to experience these aftershocks according to the seismologists for some time to come. We don't know how long, but we will continue to experience them. As a result of that, we've had some significant damage in Alaska. I think we're approaching, what was the number we were looking at? $100 million in damage to infrastructure, buildings, bridges, etc. We have a number of Alaskans that are still displaced. These gentlemen will talk about the details here in just a moment. But what I wanted to mention was that this morning I was on the phone with the Trump administration, both the head of FEMA and the Trump White House itself, in an effort to discuss where we are with the earthquake recovery and to let them know that we're going to send a formal request for a requesting a presidential major disaster declaration. If this declaration is approved, it'll help free up money so that we can get Alaska back on its feet faster. There was discussion as to whether the shutdown, the partial shutdown, will have an effect on this request. They're trying to work through that in the White House to see how long that might take or how it may interfere with this request. But nonetheless, the administration, FEMA, all of the government officials we've talked to at the federal level are acutely aware of what's happened to Alaska, what is happening to Alaska, and the obligation of the federal government to give assistance to Alaska to get us back up on our feet again. So I did speak with Doug Fear with the President's office, the White House, as well as Director Brock Long with FEMA to communicate the request. We'll be sending the actual written request to Washington here shortly. But again, I'm really grateful for the response of FEMA. I'm grateful for the response. I spoke with the President a few weeks ago when I was in Washington about the earthquake. He was obviously briefed on the earthquake, let us know that there will be assistance coming, and I thanked him once again for being very quick in that response when this occurred on November 30th, because as we know, we were in a transition between the Walker administration and my administration, and I do want to thank the Walker administration for involving me in those discussions and what was happening on the day of the earthquake and a few days after that as well. The congressional delegation is aware of our request, so we've touched base with just about everyone, and we're going to be awaiting their response. So with that, I would like to then turn it over to the gentleman behind me, and Matt.
Well, and thank you, Governor, for those remarks. And we are on a timeline today, so we're going to keep it short, but we're going to have some remarks. And first, we're going to invite up the DMVA Commissioner, Tory Sachs, to make a few remarks, and he's going to invite up members of his team as well.
Well, good morning, everybody. As the Governor mentioned, this has really been a team effort 24/7. We've had people either on the ground or in the Emergency Operations Center or on call 24/7 since the 30th of November. To say the least, this has been a significant emotional event. I am proud of the team, but the mission has only started. The tough part is really where we go from here. And that's what these gentlemen are going to be talking about as far as the overall numbers. It could have been worse. It really could have been. That this no way negates the fact that we have a whole lot of work to do. Was everybody here in the room here during the earthquake? Yeah, I was too. And I can tell you, even as a father, one of my kids is now going to a different school, so there still is that emotional upheaval. But I did want to make sure everyone has the State Individual Disaster Assistance. It is, I know you can't see it from where you're at, but ready.alaska.gov. Please get the word out, and more to follow on that. Also, as a reminder, if you have any individual damage, please make sure you have photographs or video that you can send up as well, because that will help. This has been the biggest earthquake we've had since 1964, but as you all know, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to my team and any questions you may have.
Thank you, Governor, and thank you, Commissioner. My name is Brian Fisher. I'm the incident commander in the state's Emergency Operations Center and the state coordinating officer for the recovery from the earthquake. Just a couple of figures for you. We are very much still in the response phase of this disaster. As of this morning, we have 151 individuals from 46 households that are still sheltered. Their homes are unlivable and they've been displaced. So the governor's program, the State Individual Assistance Program, is sheltering those individuals today. As of this morning, 7,700 Alaskans have applied for assistance with the State Individual Assistance Program. Every day that number is growing. We're taking applications 6 days a week, and we can foresee that the number will grow upwards of 10,000 Alaskans that'll be applying for state assistance. I think it's important to note that although we made a request, the governor made a request to the president today for a presidential major disaster declaration, there is a disaster declared for the state of Alaska, and the governor's programs are in place and running right now. The folks that we have in shelters are an example of that. 7,700 individuals applying. It's a very large number. I've been in this job for 25 years, and this is the largest number of disaster applicants that I've seen in my career. So we'll be working through that process now. Our next steps are to look at transitioning from the sheltering program, where we have individuals who've been displaced in their hotels, to temporary housing. It's another state program that we have where we find them similar living conditions, similar homes or apartments or condominiums that they were in prior to the earthquake, and being able to transition them out of the hotels they're in now into homes. For individual homeowners, that program is eligible for up to 18 months. For renters in the impacted area, we can provide temporary housing for 3 months. That's part of the state program. So as we're transitioning from the sheltering to the temporary housing, we continue to work with FEMA. FEMA is on board, even though the partial government shutdown. We have a number of individuals from FEMA that are working in the State Emergency Operations Center this morning, assisting us with mass care needs and our sheltering issues. We do have 181 open emergency assistance cases today. That includes the folks that need shelter, as well as survivors of the earthquake that need things like food and water or heat or transportation assistance. So in partnership with the Matanuska-Susitna Borough, the municipality of Anchorage, and the Kenai Peninsula Borough, and our volunteer organizations active in disaster, we're helping Alaskans in need right now with the immediate needs that they have while we're waiting for this major disaster declaration that will really bring the recovery assistance along with our programs to help us recover from this.
Okay, we're going to open it up for questions, and we're going to go ahead with Steve Quinn, KTVA.
Steve Quinn, KTVA. This is for anybody. Can you explain what does this disaster declaration really mean for Alaska, and also what kind of timeline is involved here as far as a response from the federal government? Yes, we acknowledge this, and then money coming to the state.
Thank you. Brian Fisher again. Thanks for the question. So timeline-wise, we spent the last month, the first couple of weeks after the earthquake was really all about the initial response, making sure folks were safe, that the roads and bridges were repaired, that schools were reopened. Following that, FEMA deployed a number of folks up here to help assess the damages with us. That assessment was important for the request that was made today, that they had eyes on the damages that were out there. The request that's being submitted by the governor today will go through FEMA. The processes that it goes through the Federal Emergency Management Agency. They review the information in that request and then transmit it to the White House. Unfortunately, the White House does not have a timeline for when they have to respond. We have a timeline on when we have to make an ask for things like that, but the president can take as much time as he wants. We would have to refer those questions to FEMA and the White House on when we're going to get a response. If we do get the major declaration, there are a couple of programs similar to the state's programs that could be enacted. One is for infrastructure. It's called our Public Assistance Program. If that does come to play, we believe it will. The state of Alaska and applicants like the school districts and municipalities that had infrastructure damage, our utility companies, are eligible for reimbursement from the federal government of not less than 75% of the cost to repair the infrastructure to pre-disaster conditions. So that's what would be coming on the infrastructure side. On the individual and households program with FEMA, our individual assistance program, those numbers are a little bit different. If it's declared for individuals, eligible homeowners are eligible for up to $34,900 in assistance from the federal government. The state's program is running right now, and in statute, our program can provide half as much as the federal program is. So if we were not to receive a presidential declaration for individuals, our program will run its entire course, and individuals are eligible for up to $17,450 in assistance from the state program.
We see with disasters that Congress often has to approve some emergency funding, so maybe this is a question for the governor. Are you expecting to get that kind of help from Congress? In the past, there's even in-party fighting over whether funding should be approved.
That's a good question, but what I've seen in the past is that Americans pull together during disasters, whether it's a hurricane in the southeast, fires in California, a gas line explosion in Massachusetts. I don't see it becoming a party issue, and I know that our delegation is on top of this, and as I mentioned when we were back east talking with the Trump administration and their cabinet, they were acutely aware of what was going on. So I would anticipate that we'll get the support that we need, and I anticipate we would get the support that we would need from Congress as well.
Zach?
I don't know if this is a question for the governor or for Mr. Sutton, but what is the breakdown in that $100 million estimate between public assistance and private requests? I mean, is it about half and half, or 80-20, or how does it break down?
We got those numbers right there.
Again, this is more of an operational question, but I can answer the question. Right now, the numbers that we have are from joint preliminary damage assessment that right after the event happened, the 10th through the 17th, we went out with FEMA and did joint damage assessments for the individual homes. The next week, we went out with the different teams and did the assessments for the public infrastructure that was damaged. Right now, we've got about looks like about $58.7 million in the request for assistance. Of that, about $48 million is for infrastructure, and $10.6 million right now for individuals. Those numbers will grow. Again, those numbers come from just that week's reviewing with alongside of FEMA infrastructure and damages to homes that we received information from the municipalities about. So, does that answer the question?
I guess I'm just a little fuzzy on the math. If it's $58 million from that week's assessment versus the $100 million, is the $100 million, Governor, that you mentioned, is that just the sort of
road
projected
damages.
Yeah,
estimate?
there are additional road damages. That is a different program that we don't do, that's done by federal roads and highways. So that's all added up into that. That's just the initial big picture damages that we see at the state. Thanks.
Hey.
When it comes to individuals, Governor, this is for you, who are waiting for that assistance, waiting to hear back from DC, do you have a message for Alaskans right now that are just kind of in that limbo stage?
Well, certainly, we have been on top of this issue since day one. The moment this happened, these fine individuals were obviously on the command post and monitoring and assessing the damage. And so our involvement in this issue has not stopped since then. We've actually shifted a responsibility to one of our own staff members to be a coordinator with the governor's office to make sure that we are kept appraised of what's happening. But the long story short is we're going to bird dog this to make sure that any assistance that we can get from the federal government and through the state, that it's done in an expedited manner, that we understand that this is going to be a long-term event with these continual aftershocks and the fact that we're in winter and what spring will uncover and summer will uncover. We're anticipating that the assessment will grow in terms of damage. But what I can tell Alaskans is that we're on this. This is priority number one right now, and that we will continue to work diligently to get them the assistance that they need. So this is a daily event.
And if I can ask one more question. Talking about this being an ongoing event, I know that the shutdown might have complicated some of the working around with FEMA and with contacting the White House. They're very busy right now. Do you think that that's something that long-term might dampen their ability to respond to Alaska to provide assistance while the shutdown's ongoing?
I would hope not, and I would say that it's an unusual situation to have a disaster such as this during a shutdown, or request, I should say, during a shutdown. But it's my understanding those folks are coming up with the answers as to whether they can help us immediately through the shutdown and how they would go about doing that. So I would anticipate that we're going to get information back from the federal government here pretty quickly as to how they can assist this. And I would, again, I would probably state that given this is an earthquake recovery, that they'll do everything they can to expedite that assistance.
Devin?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. So the assessments are continuing, though? We did that preliminary assessment. Can you talk a little bit about how that work will continue moving forward?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, the assessments will continue all the way into the summer. So those initial assessments were required for the governor's request to the president for a major disaster declaration. Of that number of 7,700 applicants for our state individual assistance program, we're going out today with inspectors and verifiers. We received telephone and web registrations at the website Commissioner Sachs talked about. And we have building construction estimators, those types of folks that are going out and verifying that the damages that were reported online or over the telephone are true. It's part of the process to make the assistance available that's available right now. So that will continue. If we do receive the federal declaration, FEMA will come up with their own set of individuals. It's a completely separate program from the state program. And our team will work side by side with them, and they'll continue to do the inspections. Like the governor just mentioned, we anticipate a lot of damage that will be uncovered when the snow melts in the spring. I think fortunate for us, FEMA is very used to dealing with declared disasters in Alaska. We have a lot of disasters in rural Alaska, and they're very accustomed to having to wait until breakup to be able to uncover the true extent of the damages.
Right. And then what is our plan B if we don't get the major declaration, or we get the minimum amount where they don't trigger individual assistance or something? What is sort of the how would the state sort of deal with it at that point?
So there is a state disaster declaration in place already that authorizes both public assistance and individual assistance. So regardless of what we receive from the federal government, those programs are in place to assist the jurisdictions that were impacted and individuals and families. So that's already in place, and that's what we're working.
Less money will be available.
Less money available.
Yeah. Okay. Right. But the state would anticipate being able to cover the public damage, over time, right? Is that how that would work?
Correct. Similar to the federal process, we're providing those estimates right now. We'll be building that picture as the months go on and as all the rest of the damage is uncovered, and we'll be sharing that through the governor's office to the legislature and working with the legislature to make sure that that funding's available.
Yeah. And then I think my last question is, if you're someone who's been displaced, are you responsible for finding your own housing, or does the state actually communicate with landlords? Like, that's a nuts and bolts question.
So today for the sheltering piece, we are contracting directly with hotels, and most area hotels in the municipality and in the Matsu Borough have been incredibly supportive of assisting survivors. So we're working with directly with hotels and the survivors right now. For the temporary housing program, it really is a partnership between our agency and the individual homeowners. So we encourage them to find reasonable accommodations to go rent or lease, and then we will enter into a contractual agreement with the landlords. So that money won't go to the survivors; it'll be paid right to the landlords. But we encourage them to find housing that's suitable for them. There are limitations to the amount of assistance we can provide there. I said 18 months for homeowners and 3 months for individuals. There's also, we use HUD's fair market rates for rental properties based on 1, 2, 3, 4 bedroom homes, and that'll be the limit of assistance that's available. So we'll work with each individual family to make sure that they find a place that's suitable for them.
Okay, got it. And actually, a question for you, sir. What school is your kid at, and where is he now? What years?
Grunning, and now she's at Chugiak. So yeah, I just want to say, from a personal perspective, I know it did impact a whole lot of people. And even though there weren't any deaths or really bad injuries, just loud and clear, we have work to do. And we want to make sure that we get that assistance out to people right now. So the deadline for the website to apply for individual assistance, that is the 29th of January. And we have a toll-free number as well that is on the website when you get to it. But if you have any questions for me, I just want to hit it really loud and clear. I understand that it could have been a whole lot worse, but we have work to do. Yeah.
Elwood, you had a question.
Governor Elwood Bramer with the Alaska Journal of Commerce. We talked a lot about getting federal money here and help that way. Do you expect, has your administration identified any projects that you, from the earthquake damage that you'll have in the capital budget?
We're waiting for the assessment to come in from the Director of Transportation and other departments. We'll probably be having those conversations here in the next few days.
Just a last question.
I know we have a reporter on the line for, I think Becky Bohr from AP. Can we go ahead and allow Becky to ask her question?
Yes, Becky, please proceed.
Yeah, appreciate it. I'm not sure who this is for, but there was discussion about whether the shutdown would have an impact. Is there a time sensitivity here? I mean, is there sufficient funding available through the state for a specific period that would get us through if we end up having to wait for the federal government for additional money? I'm just wondering kind of what the maximum amount would be before the state would essentially be tapped out.
Do you want to talk about how we would deal with any disaster, whether it's an earthquake, flood, et cetera?
Hi, Becky. Thanks for the question. This is Brian Fisher. When the earthquake was declared on November 30th, that opened up our programs. The state of Alaska does have a disaster relief fund. It's there are regular monies appropriated into that by the legislature each year. There is sufficient funds in there for us to wait to hear from the president on whether we receive a major disaster declaration or not. But all of these programs that we run for disaster recovery and disaster assistance you can consider them reimbursable programs, if you will. So for infrastructure owners and operators, the school districts, the jurisdictions on the infrastructure side, it's really incumbent on them to make the repairs as necessary as they can today with their own funding. Then they'll make claims through the state program or the federal program if it's activated for reimbursement. And like I said, if we receive the federal disaster declaration for infrastructure, that's reimbursed on a 75%, 25% federal state share. So we encourage all survivors as well as the infrastructure owners and operators to make the repairs that they can now, to start doing their technical assessments with engineers and geotechnical engineers to come up with their plans to rebuild. And then down the road, they'll be seeking reimbursement from our programs to be able to do that. But there is sufficient funds in the disaster relief fund. Those are made available today for the money that we need up front here. And we don't anticipate any shortages at all while we await a determination from the president.
Anything else there, Becky? Okay, and then Zach?
Governor, you don't live too far from the epicenter, and I'm just wondering if at your place there was any quake damage.
So our house, we had a number of pictures come off the wall, glass jars, glasses break. We had a pinched oil line. We have oil where we're at, not gas. Scared dogs. But other than that, we were actually in great shape. That evening, I'll tell you a very quick, fascinating story. So I was in Phoenix on Thursday. I was at a conference with other governors. And the last section of the day was disasters. This is Thursday. And so you had folks like Haley Barbour and others talking about hurricanes and fires and so forth. And they turned to me and I said, well, you could have a volcano, you could have fires, floods, maybe even an earthquake. Boarded the plane that night. Got to Anchorage, stayed at a sister-in-law's house, got in at 4 in the morning, and at 8:30, the earthquake hit. So no, we personally are in great shape. It's the folks that we're talking about that have been displaced, that have damage to their homes. They're the ones that we're really concerned about, obviously, and we're trying to get the help to those folks as soon as possible. Again, we don't know how these aftershocks are going to manifest themselves. Certainly doesn't help the situation. And again, I believe that the Trump administration and others at FEMA understand the nature of an earthquake. Unlike a fire that may be over in a couple days or a flood, this thing may take some time to really figure out and assess all the damage.
We'll do one more, and then we have to get going.
Cool, yeah. I was just wondering if the state will be covering is there a certain type of damage that just wouldn't qualify? There's people who have, cracked foundations, and there's people whose grandmother, your grandmother's pot fell and broke, and that might be $200, but anyway, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And this is Brian Fisher. We've been receiving a lot of those questions from the beginning from our programs being activated. The state's programs cover really essential items to a home. both damage to essential areas of a home. You could think things like bedrooms, kitchens, bathrooms. For personal property loss from the earthquake, that also includes essential items, things like hot water heaters or stoves or refrigerators, those kind of things. It will not replace artwork. It will not replace things that are not essential to having a safe, secure, and habitable home. So it's only limited to those essential items.